Kazuya's grandfather tells Souma that people have families so that they don't die alone. As Sauma's parents and grandmother had died, after he dies, Souma will become alone. He tells Souma to start a family and keep them safe. Not long after that, Kazuya's grandfather dies and Souma ends up alone, facing a dilemma and wondering what to do. Elfrieden Kingdom's king and his ministers decide to summon a hero. They start the procedure and activate a big summoning circle covering the kingdom and end up summoning Souma, who was at a library at that moment. They bring Souma to the king, who thanks him for answering their call, but Souma is annoyed as he didn't answer anything and got dragged into this world, but decides to listen to what they have to say, before getting angry. In the supercontinent Landia, many races had made it their home, forming a number of countries. However, 10 years ago at the northernmost end of Landia, a void opened and monsters arrived from the demon world, causing a big war. Some nations united to fight the monsters, but ended up losing, and eventually the monsters took 1/3 of the continent, which territory became known as Demon Lord's Domain. As the monsters are divided due to the expansion of the battle line, the rest of the nations were able to keep their ground. Souma hopes they don't intend to make him fight the monsters, but learns that they intend to send him to Grand Chaos Empire instead of the financial aid they had been requested. Since Grand Chaos Empire shares a large border with the Demon Lord's Domain, they are one of the main armies who fight the demons and had requested financial support from those that do not share borders with the demons. Since refugees fled from the northern part, the Elfrieden Kingdom is barely able to feed all and cannot pay the financial aid. However, there is a special clause that allows them to summon a hero and send him instead. Souma wonders what a hero is and is explained that the hero is said to lead revolution into a new age, but don't know more about it. Souma wonders if Grand Chaos Empire may wish to dissect him to find what makes him a hero, and the king and his minister deny it. But that only makes it sound even more possible. Souma wonders what to do and asks if the Empire will make more requests, and the Prime Minister believes they will keep requesting as long as there are monster attacks. Souma then asks if they can summon other people and is explained that the last time they summoned a hero was 500 years ago, and they are unable to summon very often. As he figures he is important, he questions them if they can do something as foolish as to send him now. Souma then wishes to see the finances of the kingdom and improve them to strengthen the nation and reject the imperial demands. Souma, the Prime Minister Marx, and the King Albert Elfrieden spend 3 days reviewing the finances, after which Souma is surprised to hear the king abdicate the throne to give it to Souma and announce an engagement between Souma and his daughter Liscia Elfrieden. The news reached the 3 dukes that lead the kingdom's armed forces, Castor Vargas, Excel Walter, and Jorg Carmine, who are surprised. Liscia rushes to return home, thinking the throne is usurped, but learns that Albert had abdicated himself as he believes Souma is more fit to rule the kingdom. Albert informs her that it's up to her if she will marry Souma, but should at least meet him first. Liscia goes to Souma, who saw her as fresh manpower, and learning she can read, he wants her to help out. But Liscia reveals she is the princess and wonders how he took the throne. Souma explains that Albert just gave it to him and all he was trying to do is look after his safety. After looking at the finances, Souma believed they may make him oversee the financial management, but not take over the throne. Souma reveals that there is no need for them to marry and that he intends to give up the throne to her in a few years after he brings the country's finances back on track. Liscia wonders if he can really fix the finances in a few years and about the current situation with the financial aid. But Souma states he had already secured the money by selling the national treasures. He explains he kept those that are with high historic or cultural value and split the items in 3, with historic or cultural value, which will be more beneficial to be displayed in a museum, with no historic or cultural value that he sold, and the remaining are magical items, which felt like weapons and he decided to not sell them. Excel Walter decides to send Canaria to check how capable the new king is. Souma intends to pay the empire the last possible day. Liscia wonders why not keep the money and distribute them to the military as he intends to strengthen the country. However, Souma explains that they need time and strengthening their military won't solve the food shortage and refugee issues, and eventually they will lose support of the people and outside forces may instigate an uprising. Landia is a world full of magic and unusual creatures. A lot of the monsters are used for flying, pulling cars or ships. Magic is used in everyday life like lighting a fire for cooking. The world lacks science and technology is not very high level with feudal systems still in place. Souma is informed that summoned heroes are sometimes imparted with magic and they need to do a magic check. He is taken to a gargoyle-like small statue, which if he touches will tell in his mind what nature of magic he may have. As he touches it, the statue shines and Souma learns he can use magic, but wonders of what use it can be to him. Liscia enters Sauma's office and is surprised to see people working there. She notices pens moving on their own and write documents and realizes it's Sauma's magic. Souma explains that his magic living poltergeist allows him to copy his consciousness into objects and freely control them. With that, he is able to deal with paperwork faster. Liscia asks about the other people in his office and Souma explains that they are looking for untapped money, if there are wasted spending or misappropriation disguised as spending, and will be getting the responsible parties pay back the missing amount or be arrested. Even though they have already found enough money to pay the empire, they can never have enough capital or manpower, and he makes Liscia help him with the paperwork. They spend the whole night working and early in the morning, Souma is the only one still working, while the rest, including Liscia, had fallen asleep. He approaches Liscia, who then awakens. He informs her that they have finished working and wishes to show her something. They take a horse, but as Souma doesn't know how to ride, Liscia sits in front. Liscia wonders if Souma has a family in the other world, and Souma explains he has none left as his grandfather died before he got here. But as there is no one waiting for him, he isn't in a rush to return home. Souma takes her to a field full of white cotton flowers. Liscia finds them pretty, but Souma comments that these inedible fields are the reason for the country's food shortage. Souma explains that northern countries produced a lot of cotton, but as the war started and the demon lord's domain expanded, their production plummeted. With supplies dropping, the purchase price increased and farmers stopped growing food and instead started growing cotton. You can still import food from other countries, but the cotton prices crashed as other countries also started producing cotton instead of food, so the supply grew larger than the demand. Souma wanted Liscia to know this, as one day she will lead the country. During breakfast, Souma states that their first step should be limiting the planting of commercial crops and bringing back the food crop fields. Souma wishes to prioritize soybeans and potatoes as they can withstand inclement weather. As agricultural reforms don't happen fast, Souma states that the kingdom will be buying all food and then sell it to people for cheaper, and he wants to compensate the difference with something that they can export. They are joined by Ludwin Arx, captain of the Royal Guards. Ludwin asks Souma if the reforms are going smoothly, but Souma states they aren't, as aside from Prime Minister Marx, the rest of the human resources aren't of any use. Souma wishes to use the gemstone broadcast system for recruits and reach out to the whole country. Liscia explains that normally they recruit new people either through personal connections or by a written exam. However, only about 30% of the population can read. Souma disagrees with this system as it excludes 70% of potential workers, who may do certain jobs even if they can't read or write. Souma decides to use Kao's words and broadcasts that if someone possesses an aptitude, they will make use of it. As Souma gives speech, he states that the former king was a great ruler for peaceful times, but in the current situation, they don't need a saint, but a survivor, who is tenacious, and because of that their former king chose him. Souma states that they need talents who are second to none, and it doesn't matter what their social stature, age, ethnicity, education, or place of origin is. There may be talents that people will wonder if there will be of any use, but Souma will decide if he needs their talent or not, and it doesn't matter if others say it's useless. Souma then states that if they can demonstrate their talent is unequaled in all the kingdom, he will issue a certificate of peerlessness and grant them a monetary reward. People are also allowed to recommend others and will get 30% of their monetary reward. As he ends the broadcast, people cheer in excitement. People from different places of the kingdom start to pack their bags and leave towards the capital. Souma explains that due to some strange power imbued in heroes, he is able to speak and understand the language of this world, allowing him even to write and read in it, which is also the only language in that world. Sauma's auto-translate works only on him and doesn't translate recordings from his phone as the people hear them as some foreign language. Liscia recalls Sauma's words, but wonders if he really meant them. However, she is sure that the country needs him, as he told her he didn't have any family left in his world. Liscia wonders if he will remain in their world if she became his family. Her maid, Serena, comes in and feels that Liscia is a bit flushed, but Liscia tries to deny it. Serena informs her that there will be a ceremony about the new recruits and Liscia needs to be present. Poncho feels nervous and shares to Hakuya that even though his talent was recognized, he is nervous that he will be facing the king with his kind of talent. Meeting the king, Aisha Udgard refuses to bow, stating as a warrior her tribe only bows to their master. Souma is fine as he was the one that called them. As they proceed, Aisha comes out first. Souma uses his living poltergeist to read about dark elves and know more about them. Marks reveals that she has remarkable talent in fighting arts. Aisha reconfirms that they will receive a reward for being recognized as the best in the kingdom. As Souma confirms it, Aisha states she doesn't want the reward, but that she has a request. She reveals that in the god-protected forest, they are concerned that the trees are becoming thin and no young trees are growing, and wishes Souma to lend them his wisdom. Souma is unsure what to say, but asks if they are thinning the forest properly. Souma didn't expect her to not know and explains it's when you fell a moderate number of trees in order to maintain a woodland, but then realizes they probably don't know it. Souma then explains that when you leave big trees, their foliage blocks out the sunlight, which prevents younger trees from growing. And when trees become too overgrown, they interfere with each other's growth and you end up with only old trees. The forest then becomes vulnerable to snow and wind, and the soil loses its water-retaining capacity, making it susceptible to sediment disasters like landslides. Aisha is amazed by what Souma said and decides to pledge lifelong loyalty to him, and will fight and die by his command. Aisha wants Souma to come to the forest and teach them about fitting. Next one is Juna Dama. Marks explains she has beauty and a singing voice incomparable to any other. Dama's family ancestors were Lorleys, and her talent may be in her blood. Souma asks her if she could sing a song that will energize the nation. Juna explains that the songs she knows are largely melancholic in nature, but if she hears one, she can sing it. Souma then takes out his phone and gives her a headphones and plays a song from his world. After hearing it, Juna states she can sing it, even though she doesn't know the language. After singing it, she receives applause from everyone. Juna states she wishes to learn more songs from Sauma's world. Marks introduces the next person, Poncho Panicotta. Marks explains that Poncho's talent is eating, and while many came claiming the same talent, there was none who were able to top him. His appetite had led him to every corner of the world, trying every dish. Souma then stands up stating he was waiting for someone like him and is delighted to see him the most. Poncho is moved as they called him Fatso, who spends his money only on food, but Souma assures him that his talent will save the country. Knowing the country's traditions, Souma decides to give him a name, Ishizuka, a name of an insatiable hunter and promoter of food from his world. As the country sees Souma accepting Poncho, they start to think that they may try too, and begin to gather in Elfrieden. Marks explains that the previous three nominated themselves, but the next person was nominated by someone else and calls Hakuya Kwanman to step forward. Marks states that Hakuya has exhibited a talent for intellect and is believed that his knowledge and memory are unrivaled in the kingdom. Souma asks who recommended him, and Hakuya explains the uncle he lives with told him that he is old enough to stop reading books and should go and serve the country. Souma recalls how he was told the same thing and asks Hakuya what genre of books he reads. Hakuya reveals he reads everything like literature, history, law, and military tactics, and that assimilating knowledge unknown to him is his reason for living. Souma offers him to be a librarian in the castle library, which will give him access to books available only to librarians. Hakuya states he would have accepted that moments ago, but has changed his mind. Hakuya wants to use his knowledge to underpin Sauma's hegemony. Souma asks him why he changed his mind. Hakuya states he was sizing him and judging if he was a ruler worth serving. Hakuya reveals that he used Poncho as a test, and even if he didn't see his talent right now, but appointed him, thinking he could be useful in the future, he would pass. However, if he found Poncho's talent as useless, he would have failed as a king. Hakuya didn't expect Souma to welcome Poncho like that and is pleased that he was wrong about Souma, as Souma understands what the country needs the most right now. Souma invites Hakuya to his chambers to determine himself his talent and if he would be useful to him. Hakuya would later become the Prime Minister in Black. That evening, Souma recognizes his talent and installs him as his right-hand man. Marks proceeds to introduce the last person, Tomo Inui of the Mystic Wolves. She has unusual talent allowing her to converse with birds and beasts. She was brought to the stables, where she asked the horses and was able to tell everything about their health and history. Reading about the Mystic Wolves and learning that they don't live in Elfrieden, he guesses she may be a refugee. Souma then wonders on how to use her talent. Tomo wishes to tell him something, but as she is nervous and he can't hear her, he decides to go to her. Tomo then whispers something in his ear, which surprises Souma. Souma explains that from the world he is, monsters are neither people nor animals, and are a separate type of creatures. But in this world, those creatures fall into both categories of people and animal. Humans, elves, beastmen, and dragonutes fall into mankind category. giant lizard, giant ants, man-eating plants are still considered animals and plants. Dragons are treated differently as god beasts. The reason those creatures are considered animals is because they are incorporated in the ecosystem. Monsters are considered creatures that look like different creatures fused together. Among them are some that are relatively human-like in form, but their intelligence is no different than a common beast. Tomo whispers something into Sauma's ear which shakes him up. As he confirms no one else outside Tomo's mother knows it, he tries to act normally. Souma returns to his throne, stating that he heard her request and will consider fulfilling it. He tells Marks that Tomo's talent is a rare one and he wants to discuss later with him on how he can use it. Souma then thanks the new recruits and hopes they lend them their aid to revive the kingdom. Souma then gathers Tomo, Liscia, Marks, and Ludwin. He wonders if anyone else heard what Tomo told him. But as they confirm they couldn't hear, Souma feels a bit relaxed that it probably wasn't broadcasted to everyone in the country. Liscia wonders if what she told him is that serious. Souma explains that Tomo told him that she talked with a demon. It was believed that monsters have the intelligence of an animal. However, among the Demon Lord Domain's monsters there are some that work in groups, could use weapons and magic and behave almost like people. The humans started calling these unique monsters demons. However, there is a difference between them and other races and breeds that are considered people. The demons speak a language that cannot be understood. Marks and the rest can't believe Tomo spoke with a demon as no one can understand them. Tomo reveals she spoke to a short demon with a dog face. She met him in the mountain while gathering vegetables and instantly yelled for help. The demon then was surprised she could understand him. Tomo believes he was a scout and told her that he can't watch someone with same scent as him get killed and that she must run. Souma guesses that only a handful of demons would let mystic wolves escape, but if they can talk with them, that can alter their situation greatly. Liscia wonders if he plans on negotiating with them to get their lands back. Souma states that mankind is currently united and is fighting the demons, but if people learn they can communicate with the demons, there would be some that will attempt to forge an alliance with them. Souma guesses that there are some conflicts between kingdoms and Ludwin confirms that Amadonia and Elfrieden were in a conflict before. Souma and the rest agree that they must keep this a secret and Souma wishes to safeguard Tomo as she is more important than him and could turn the tide of relations between mankind and demons. Marks wonders if that won't bring more attention to her as she is a peasant. He then suggests they welcome her as royalty and that Souma could adopt her, but since he isn't married, that would not be possible. Marks afterwards proposes Souma to take her as secondary consort, but as she is too young, Souma is hesitant. Souma suggests that the previous king adopt her and Marks and Liscia welcome that idea. Tomo states that she already has a family and her mother and little brother are waiting for her at the refugee camp. Souma assures that if she is adopted, her family will become his family and they will be able to live in the castle as well. Tomo agrees and Souma tells Marks to wait a bit before announcing it as it may draw suspicion. Until then, Souma wonders what position they could give her to keep her at the castle. Marks then suggests putting her in charge of the horses that draw Sauma's carriage and Souma agrees. Wanting to relax a bit, Souma goes to Liscia's room. He wonders how Tomo is doing and Liscia explains that her mother took a liking to her and now spends a lot of time with Tomo. Souma receives news of Poncho's return and takes Liscia to meet him. Poncho comments that he managed to get all the food he was after. Liscia recognizes his sack as the hero's sack and Souma confirms as it can hold more than it seems and things in it are less prone to spoil, so it was perfect to gather food. Using the broadcast system, Juna and Poncho announces the king's brilliant lunch. Souma then appears and first apologizes for the country's food shortage, but informs the people that they are moving with a plan to increase food production. Souma explains that the broadcast is designed to help until the food shortage is resolved by introducing foods that the people in this nation are unaccustomed to eat and methods on how to prepare them. To demonstrate the foods can be eaten, he has Liscia, Aisha and Tomo taste them. Poncho shows the first dish, an octopus, which Liscia and the rest find disgusting to eat. Souma then prepares and cooks the octopus. As Liscia and the rest taste it, they find it delicious and can't stop eating it. Poncho shows the next dish, burdock roots. Tomo wonders if they can eat them, but Aisha states that as she lives in the forest, she had eaten them before. Souma then prepares a salty and a sweet version, which both end up being enjoyed by the group. Poncho then reveals the third dish, stating it's something he cooked beforehand. Liscia and Aisha are shocked to see locusts, but Tomo quickly eats one, stating the bean-boiled locusts remind her of her home. Souma is surprised they were bean-boiled and Poncho explains the process of how he seasoned them. Souma realizes that the fermented bean product is miso, and the mash water is soy sauce. Souma then takes a bite and cries of joy as it reminds him of his homeland and that this world has the flavors he loves. They proceed with the next dish, and upon seeing it, everyone is shocked. There are creatures called jelons. They are not really strong, and you can easily kill them by cutting them or squashing them. To reproduce, they divide themselves. The next dish Poncho is about to present to everyone is made from jelon. That surprises everyone as they didn't even know they were edible. Aisha wonders if the jelon is dead and Poncho confirms. Aisha and Liscia find it strange as they never heard of a jelon carcass. As Souma wonders why, Liscia explains that cutting the membrane of a jelon results in its body fluids coming out. Poncho comments there is a trick to that which he learned from a small tribe. If you hit the jelon with a stick hard enough, but don't break the membrane, you can destroy the nucleus in it and kill it. After losing its nucleus, the jelon loses its liquidity over time. If you leave them for too long, their fluid will evaporate and they will become hard cured. But in 2 hours after they die, they still have some springiness and can be cooked. As Poncho finishes preparing the food, Souma notices it looks like udon. Hearing that, the girls decide to let Souma try it first as he had eaten similar looking food before. Souma decides to try it and finds it quite good and more similar to kudzu noodles than udon. One by one, the girls also decide to try it and end up liking it as well. Juna then announces the end of today's program. Souma states that there will be more if the public demands it, however not wanting to host again. Poncho wishes there is no demand. A week passes and there is big demand for more of the cooking show, causing Souma to comment they for sure need to continue. Marks wishes to speak with Souma about something important. Marks then informs Souma that he wishes to step away from being a prime minister, and just like the previous king to trust in Sauma's talent. He recommends Hakuya to take over his position and Souma accepts, but states the formal appointment will be done another day. Marks relaxes, commenting that he will take his retirement allowance, purchase a cottage in the country, and enjoy his remaining years. However, he sees Sauma's face and states that's what he considered, but since he knows the national treasury is in dire straits, so he will continue serving the king for a salary. Souma states that there are many things he isn't aware of in this world and wishes Marks to continue helping him out. Hakuya then makes a suggestion for Souma to take some time off. Souma realizes that a boss not taking a break makes it hard for his workers. Hakuya suggests that he not just stay in his room, so that his followers can see he is actually taking a break. He then proposes that he take Liscia to a date around the castle to deepen their intimacy. They can take Aisha as guard to be safe. Souma goes to Aisha and Liscia and sees them training. As they both launch big attacks, Souma yells them to stop as they could damage the castle. Souma explains about the date and Aisha proposes they go to her forest. But Souma states he only has one day, so they will go to the forest some other time. Aisha explains that there may be some dark elves that are against cutting down the forest and wishes for Souma to go there and explain them the reason. Souma agrees to go when he is able to. Souma then asks her for a favor and Aisha is ready to offer herself, but is surprised to hear that Souma wishes her to escort them on the date as guard. The three of them dress in the military academy uniforms. Souma finds the uniform fitting Liscia, but not Aisha, as he imagines dark elves looking differently. As they take the carriage to town, Souma explains they will be acting as normal students and Aisha shouldn't call him His Majesty. As she wonders what to call him, he suggests using his first name Kazuya. Liscia is surprised as she thought his name is Souma as he is Souma Kazuya. Souma confirms, but then realizes that the country uses naming like the West countries with given name first. As all official documents have it as Souma Kazuya, he realizes he screwed up and they can't fix it now. Aisha suggests that they switch when they are in public and in private, and in this situation use Kazuya. Souma can't believe that Aisha is the one covering for his mess up as he imagined her as the letdown dark elf. As they enjoy walking around town, they eventually get hungry and decide to go eat at Juna's cafe. Entering, Souma immediately introduces himself as Kazuya, an old friend of Juna, and Juna quickly catches up in the act. They have gel and udon and Juna explains that there is big demand for it, and as they have not yet recovered from the food shortage, having such affordable source of food is good. Liscia feels that Souma is treating Juna differently from the rest and Souma confirms that he gets nervous talking to a beautiful girl. He then scolds Aisha for eating and talking as she has to do only one of those and Aisha decides to continue eating. Juna comments that when she first met Aisha, she felt like a gallant woman of action, who dealt directly with the king, but now she feels like a letdown bent on eating. Souma and Liscia confirms, stating that it feels like she is competing with Poncho for gluttony. Aisha then wonders if her appetite is the reason Souma doesn't want her in his bed. Souma states that there is no way he can do that when he is already engaged. That surprises the girls, and Liscia explains that polygamy is recognized in the kingdom. Juna adds that even women can have multiple husbands. Souma comments he hasn't seen other queen consorts, except Liscia's mother, and Liscia explains her mother used to hold the royal power as she was the daughter of the previous king. As she married her father, he became the king and took charge of governmental affairs, and because of that her father never downplayed her mother and took any other consorts. Souma then wonders if it was right for the king to abdicate the throne for him. Liscia states that he wouldn't do it without her mother's approval. And since Liscia is the only one pretender for the throne, she still would have to take a husband. As the circumstances are different, Souma can take another wife, and while she won't be excited for it, she is willing to allow 8 including her. As there are 8 days in a week in this world, she could have him 1 day for herself. As Souma starts to imagine his harem, he hears a girl yelling on the next table. Elfrieden Kingdom's military force is about 100,000 people. The army led by Duke Jorg Carmine is about 40,000. The Navy led by Duchess Excel Walter is about 10,000. The Air Force led by Duke Castor Vargas is about 1,000. However, one Wyvern Knight is said to equal to 100 feet soldiers. Further, the Forbidden Army that was comprised of the Royal Guard, that reports to the king, and the private armies of the noblemen other than the 3 dukedoms is about 40,000. Additionally, mercenary units dispatched as part of a service contract with the mercenary state Zem fall under the Forbidden Army, but their employment has already been terminated. The reason is that soldiers who fight for profit would readily switch sides if there is greater profit. The Forbidden Army is smaller than the dukedom's forces due to the country's ideals. The kingdom was originally formed when various races decided to come together. Humans were the most populous among them, so one became the king. But to preserve the rights of the other races, the top leaders of the 3 armed forces over air, land, and sea were chosen from the other races. If a human tyrant started oppressing the other races, the 3 dukedoms' forces who outnumber the Forbidden Army would resist. While it looks well designed, the multiple systems has many disadvantages for decision-making. Souma contacted the 3 dukedoms for a reform, but none have replied back. However, they give Souma some free time. At Juna's cafe, Souma sees a mystic wolf girl raising her voice, but is corrected it's a mystic fox and that if he mistakes it in front of them, both the mystic wolf and mystic fox would be angry. They see she is talking with Albert Magna, the oldest heir to the prestigious Magna family. As he is supposed to have a post in the army, Liscia wonders why he is in the capital. Juna explains the girl is Keed Foxia, a regular customer, and a mage in the Forbidden Army. They overhear Keed telling Halbert to not go see Jorg Carmine, as he is at odds with the new king and at the worst case scenario, there could be a civil war. However, Halbert states that he must go, since if there will be war, it's his chance to get ahead in the world. Halbert's father served under Jorg, but Halbert believes he is a coward and is afraid to get caught in the fighting. Teed states that his father understands the situation and Jorg refusing to heed the king's call has no just cause. She further explains that internal fighting will only benefit neighboring countries like Amadonia, who would try to take the land that was taken by Elfrieden 2 kings ago. Republic of Turgis has most of its territory in ice and would love to get some rich soils and a harbor that won't freeze over. Souma recalls his conversation with Hakuya about Elfrieden's neighbors. Hakuya explains who the neighbors are and states that 4 are neutral, while 1 is hostile. Souma wonders if that's Zem, due to them terminating the mercenary contract, but Hakuya denies it. Turgis in winter would be frozen and usually they head north, so if they don't give them a chance, Turgis won't do anything hostile against them. Souma then guesses it's Amadonia, who had offered them assistance by sending reinforcements to put down the 3 dukedoms. Hakuya believes they made the same offer to the 3 dukedoms to help them overthrow the king. They will use the chance to send troops into Elfrieden, occupying several cities, and then will decide to side with the dukedoms or the king depending on which will be more advantageous for them. The 3 leaders should also be aware of this and Souma hopes that they won't seek their help. Halbert is sure that Jorg have something in mind and Keed questions whether he will join him even though he doesn't know what he plans. Halbert states that many noblemen already joined him with their armies, but Keed states that's only because their injustice was exposed by the king and their property was confiscated. If George is taking such people, then Keed finds it hard to believe his cause is just. Halbert doesn't believe in the inexperienced king, while Jorg is battle-proved. Keed disagrees, stating that his image for the king is wrong and he is formidable. Souma joins the conversation asking why she is thinking that. Keed states that the critical things when leading an army are the quality of soldiers and supplies, which is also the same for a nation. Keed continues to explain that the king gathered people from everywhere to solve the food problem, but then looks at Souma and realizes he is the king. Keed wonders if they heard what Albert was saying and are there to arrest him, but tries to defend him, stating that he won't rebel. Souma denies it and explains he just had free time and went to Juna's cafe. Annoyed, Albert asks who Souma is and raises his voice against Keed and Souma. Aisha quickly overpowers him and stops him from moving. While he is still wondering who Souma is, Souma decides to use a famous phrase from his country and asks Albert if he forgot his face. Albert then realizes that's the king and panics, asking Keed why she didn't tell him who he was. Souma questions if Albert will be joining Jork Carmine and explains that just like how rulers choose their officers, officers can choose the ruler they are going to serve. As he hears they are friends since childhood, Souma asks Albert if he realized that joining Jork means he and Keed would be enemies and could find themselves on the battlefield, and if he would raise his sword against her. And even if it's not him personally doing it, someone else could take her life. Albert then has a moment of thinking about what he desires and for whom. A bit later, Aisha falls asleep. Liscia asks Souma if he tried to change Albert's mind, and Souma states he just told him the truth of the path he is going on. Liscia offers Souma to lay his head on her lap as this is a date, and he agrees. Liscia asks Souma if he doesn't want to be engaged to her, but Souma asks her if she is okay with him being engaged to her. Liscia states she doesn't mind and explains he is better suited to be a king than her, and that's what royalty do. Souma states he would rather marry for love. Liscia asks him if he dislikes her and if he can for sure say that he will never fall in love with her. As a moment of silence follows, Aisha asks them for how much longer she must keep pretending to be asleep, embarrassing both of them. Souma shows Liscia that he is able to use living poltergeist on 4 objects now. The maid informs him that Glaive Magna, the head of Magna family, Albert and Keed are requesting an audience with him. As he meets them, he sees bruises on Albert's face, and Glaive asks Souma to overlook his son's misconduct and begs for mercy, and explains he heard about yesterday from Keed. Glaive expects the king is angry but asks for his forgiveness and states he would take all the blame. Souma states he won't be doing anything and sees that he already has been punished. Glaive is grateful and states that he will punish him more when they return in the mansion. Souma tells him to not be harsh, and harming his beauty anymore may upset Keed, which then makes her blush. Souma then states he planned on doing it eventually, but this is a good chance. He tells Keed she is quite talented to remain a mere mage and orders her to work under Ludwin Arcs in the Royal Guard as a staff officer. Keed is surprised, but Souma reminds her of what she said yesterday and states they think alike. Souma then orders Albert to be transferred from the army to the Forbidden Army and be Keed's adjutant, standing by her and supporting her. Glaive then wishes to tell Souma something but requests the room to be cleared. They remain alone and start talking. Meanwhile, Liscia invites Keed and Albert to tea. Seeing an opportunity, the maid Serena asks how a young man and woman are able to strengthen their friendship with each other day in and day out, as it would be instructive for Liscia, causing her to blush. Keed is ready to explain, but Liscia tells her to not take Serena seriously. Glaive tells what he wanted to Souma but doesn't expect him to do anything and just wanted Souma to be aware. Souma finds the news heavy and sits to think about it. The magic in the world can be divided into the 6 elements of fire, water, earth, wind, light, and darkness. Fire, water, earth, and wind each have their own magic attacks, while light is used for healing magic. Darkness is unique, and any magic that doesn't fit into the previous 5 is labeled as darkness. Those who can use more powerful magic are known as mages. When the mages are assigned to an army, they are sent to the branch corresponding to their element. Fire elementals go to the army, wind elementals to the air force, and water elementals to the navy. Earth elementals in the Forbidden Army. Light elementals, which are medics, are assigned equally to each branch. Sauma's living poltergeist is considered other and is categorized as dark magic, and using it Souma decides to explore the world a bit. Using little Musashibo, Souma joins an adventurer's party. They quickly recall hearing about an adventurer who uses a mascot costume, who got some skill. Since the quest is at beginner's level, they decide to agree and head out. As they face monsters, Souma quickly dispatches them with ease. While proceeding in the underground passages, they end up facing an unexpectedly large salamander. As his saliva is extremely acidic and fire magic doesn't work on him, the adventurers decide to run. Souma ends up tripping and falling, and one of the adventurers, Juno, helps him and temporarily blinds the salamander with a flashlight. However, as the salamander shakes, he drops saliva everywhere and Souma protects Juno with his body. The adventurers manage to escape, and Juno thanks him for helping her out. Later, Souma washes Musashibo and is glad that he added acid resistance to his surface. Liscia joins him and realizes that Musashibo is larger than the first time she saw him. Souma admits that he asked some craftsmen to make him a new model and he has been controlling him with his magic. Liscia then realizes he is the mascot adventurer she has been hearing about. Souma explains that he wanted to see what the underground passages looked like, but he also had some fun. Several days later, Souma has his men gathered and thanks them for the sleepless nights and hard work as they can now move forward with Project Venetonova. Earlier, Souma explains that Venetonova will be a new port city, which he intends to make the biggest bay city in the country. Liscia comments they already have Lagoon City in the Walter Duchy as their primary port. She then wonders if he plans for Duchess Walter, but Souma denies, stating he isn't getting ready to start any trouble. Souma explains that after building Venetonova, they will start constructing roads allowing them to more easily control both maritime and overland shipping and distribution. Liscia wonders how that is important and Souma asks her if she knows how prices are determined. Liscia states that the more desired items are expensive, while the less wanted cheaper. Souma confirms and explains that with better distribution, even if there is shortage of a material somewhere, they can easily and fast bring it over from somewhere else where there is surplus of it, which will gradually decrease the prices. Souma explains that the most desired item right now is food, and as it's something people can't stop buying. The food price is squeezing their household budgets, not allowing them to buy anything else, which causes the nation's economy to stagnate. Souma continues to flatter his men, telling them that the work they've done is more important than that of a hero on a battlefield, and even though their names won't be remembered, he will remember their deed for the rest of his life. As a reward, he also gives them 5 days of vacation. Normally, he would also give them medals, but as that requires funds they need for other things, he apologizes and offers them to take a bottle of wine from the castle's wine cellar. Liscia wonders why Souma doesn't rest as he could use his living poltergeist, as they can't afford to lose him. Souma explains that there was too much work to be done and he needed all of his strength to do it. And in case they lose him, they can always summon another hero. As he falls asleep, Liscia kisses him on the cheek and states that the other hero won't be Souma. The next day, he goes to the future site of Venetonova where he meets Ludwin Arx. Seeing the land, Souma wonders why it remained unused. Ludwin reports that they finished marking the territory and construction was going smoothly, but there is something he needs to discuss with him in the tent. Inside, Ludwin informs him that there are people opposing the construction, who lives in a village farther inland. Led by Europe, they insist that a town must not be built on this land, since the territory is the land of Kaijin, the god of the sea, and will incur his wrath. While this may be just superstition, according to Europe, when houses are built there, a large monster comes out of the sea and swallows them whole. Thinking about it, Souma decides to meet the old man Europe. Going to Europe's house, Souma asks him to tell him more about the Kaijin. Europe explains again that when they build houses, the monsters come and swallow them. Souma then asks him to show him how far the monster territory spreads. Later, Souma discusses the situation and believes that there is no monster, but it's a tale to warn the people to not build houses there as there is a tsunami. Ludwin says he never heard tales of the place being hit by tsunami before. Souma states it's likely because the interval of the tsunami is quite long, from 100 years to even a millennia. Souma decides to continue with the project, but changes the city's location to avoid the risk of future tsunami. He then warns them that if an earthquake happens, a tsunami may happen as well, and when there is an earthquake, people need to evacuate inland quickly. Seeing Souma fired up for the project, Liscia wonders if Aisha likes Souma, and as Aisha confirms, Liscia tells her that they should keep supporting Souma so that he keeps smiling. Due to the existence of magic, the technological system can be a little different. For example, the battleship Albert, the single ship possessed by the Forbidden Army. A metal ship like this is usually made in the Industrial Revolution. However, as that still doesn't exist in this world. The ship doesn't have engines, and they use sea dragons to tow the ship. The Kanons are in a similar situation. While this world has gunpowder, they don't have firearms due to using magic for attacks. And with infusion spells, they can make objects stronger or have different effects. The battleship cannons were created to fight other battleships, as any non-water magic is greatly limited while on the sea, and they needed the means to fight. Albert and other men from the Forbidden Army help constructing the roads. He complains if this is a job for the Forbidden Army, as normally they need to protect the kingdom and not do things like this. But Keith explains that they hired the unemployed people to help out. but were still short-handed. During lunch, Albert tries a dish created by the king, a shageagi burger, and ends up enjoying it. Kid explains that it uses seasonings shoyu and mirin, which are made by mystic wolves who now can make a living selling the seasonings. She also enjoys having the fresh vegetables, commenting that the roads they made helped out greatly in making supply lines easy. Once distribution is smooth, the imbalance in supply and demand will be eliminated, which will lower the prices. Souma then shows up, but seeing how stiff Albert acts, he orders him to not be so formal and call him Souma. Souma and his group then check out the construction of the roads, and Liscia comments that she never wondered how the roads are made. Looking at the first layer, Kid explains it's a mixture of volcanic ash and lime. Souma comments it's known as Roman concrete and has the property to harden in time, as it also has some flexibility. There are buildings in his world that are still standing after 2,000 years. Liscia then sees the lamps, and Kid comments they are made so that when it gets dark, the light moss inside starts to provide light. Souma asks Aisha to explain the warding tree, and Aisha explains the tree emits a frequency that monsters and wild animals find unpleasant, and that they are using them in the god-protected forest around their villages. Souma explains the trees are planted with some space between them to not completely chase away the wild animals, as some like the gray wolves and red bears need to change hunting grounds, but if they are unable to migrate and run out of food, they will start attacking people and livestock. A messenger bird Kui then appears. Kid explains it doesn't just have homing instinct, but it can also detect the frequency of its master from a distance. As it lands on Aisha, it gives her a message. Reading it, Aisha explains that it's from her father, the chief of the Dark Elves, and informs her of a landslide that swallowed half the village and many are still missing. Souma asks Kid about how many men they have here, and she explains it's 54 from the Forbidden Army and 4 engineers from the Civil Engineering Guild, with 6 of all being earth mages. Souma then states that the group will go and rescue the elves. Souma tells Liscia to return to the capital and request a rescue party, and tell Hakuya to send relief supplies to the Dark Elves. Learning it will take them 2 days to reach Aisha's village with normal military march, Souma realizes that 2.5 days would pass since the incident, giving them only half a day until the 72-hour threshold. He explains that during natural disasters, once 3 days pass, the death rate of those who need rescuing increases significantly. Wondering what to do, Souma then sees the heavy carriages and decides to use them to transport all the men faster. Reaching Aisha's village, they meet her father, Wadden Udgard, and tell him that he brought 50 men and more will come soon. Wadden then explains where the landslide occurred and that there are already more than 100 dead, with about 40 still missing. Souma requests a list of the missing people, so they don't miss anyone. He also tells Wadden to put a few men to watch the mountain and report if there are some movements or strange noises, in order to avoid getting caught in a second landslide. Aisha requests that she be one of the people, and her father tells her to call her old friends with which she used to run in the forest. Souma instructs the Forbidden Army to listen to the voices in the dirt, but if they see a second slide, to evacuate even if they were in the middle of a rescue. As they rescue people, Souma states he heard a voice under a large trunk and tells Albert to come and help. Albert states he didn't hear anything, but is then surprised to see someone under the trunk. Souma explains he used a wooden mouse and control it, getting it into places where people can't look up. As he explains it's his living poltergeist, Souma throws up, commenting that one of his mice had found some horrible mangled bodies. Souma and Wadden confirm that they found all missing people, although some of them are already dead. Aisha informs Souma that Liscia and the relief unit had arrived, but Ropthar Udgard states it's too late. Souma states there are many things left to do, from tending the wounded to building temporary houses. However, Ropthar states that won't bring the dead back. Wadden tells Souma that Ropthar is his younger brother, who lost his wife, and his daughter is still in critical condition. Ropthar wonders why the forest took his wife, even though he was protecting it for so long. Wadden tells him it's not the time to assign any blames, but he should mourn his wife and pray for his daughter. Outside, Aisha tells Souma that Ropthar was against thinning the forest and wonders if they had done more thinning would it have prevented this incident. Souma is unsure, but explains that it would have definitely helped decrease the chances of landslides. He also explains that with thinning, they would more easily notice any signs for upcoming landslide and prepare for it. Nature isn't so weak, and it constantly goes through the process of destruction and rebirth. As they leave, Souma tells Liscia that he wasn't able to do anything. As he is the king, his job isn't to direct things on site, but to make preparations before the emergency happens. He felt he failed in many areas as he was occupied with the food shortage and the 3 dukedoms. Juna visits Souma hearing that he isn't able to sleep lately and finds him in bed still going through documents. Souma confirms, stating that while he is tired, his mind is occupied with a lot of stuff and can't fall asleep. She asks him to lie down and starts rubbing his head, telling him it's alright to show weakness, but understand why he wants to look strong in front of Liscia. Juna then notices Souma had already fallen asleep and whispers that if Liscia is the one that draws his strength, then she will be the one that conceals his weakness, and then sings him a song. The 3 dukes meet in Randall. Caster Vargas comments they need to act before all turns into Sauma's favor. Excel Walter wonders if he still thinks of rebelling against the king, while she also refused to assist him. Her priority is the safety of Lagoon City. She is sure that Amadonia had sent the same letter of assistance to the king as it sent to them, and hope that they take each other down. Excel then wonders why Jorg Carmine is against the king, considering how much patriotism and loyalty he has for the country. Jorg states he determines Souma cannot govern the kingdom. Excel still wonders why, as the king had solved a number of national crises already. Jorg then states that Souma has cast aside so much without a second thought. As he comes from another world, he doesn't hesitate to let anything go, including history, traditions, soldiers, and even ministers. Excel wonders if he is obsessed in taking the throne. Caster doubts it, and Jorg confirms that after driving the king out, they will have King Albert reclaim the throne and they will serve him again. Excel tells Caster that if anything happens, he must sever ties with Excella, Carla, and Carl. Carla Vargas then enters, stating that if her father is committed to fighting, so is she, because the king deposed King Albert and attempted to violate her friend Liscia. Excel tries to explain she is wrong, but Carla refuses to listen and wishes to fight. At the capital of Amadonia, Gaius Amadonia receives a letter from Jorg, accepting his offer. Gaius comments that if Jorg was in his prime, he would have been wise not to accept their invitation. He then tells his son Julius Amadonia that they will be sending reinforcements. Julius wonders to who, and Gaius states they will send reinforcements to the king against the dukes and to the dukes against the king. Baroa Amadonia wonders what to do with her father and brother, as sending reinforcements will weaken their country even more. Baroa believes that Elfrieden have it good due to having large population, which means more tax money and operational capital, and is jealous of Elfrieden's purse. Hakuya tells Souma that they will be having a plentiful harvest and they can consider the food issue as solved and need to move to the next. Souma realizes he really has to go through it and recalls Machiavelli saying in The Prince that if a prince turns to acts of cruelty, his position, even in peaceful times, is in jeopardy. However, there are rulers who even after committing cruelties still live good lives without uprisings, and it all depends on whether the cruelties are used properly or poorly. As Hakuya's plan is a cruelty, Souma recalls his grandfather's words to make a family and keep it safe, and then states they are commencing their subjugation. In Amadonia, Gaius prepares his troops for invasion the moment Jorg starts his rebellion. Colbert asks Gaius to reconsider his invasion as it will lead to people's starvation. However, Gaius kicks him, stating that domestic affair ministers always say the same thing. Colbert states that if they invade Elfrieden, Amadonia will be open to attacks by other countries. As mankind created Mankind Declaration to fight off the demons, they agreed that any change in territory due to conflict between mankind won't be recognized. Gaius prepares to draw out his sword, but Julius stands between his father and Colbert, stating that won't be a concern, since Elfrieden haven't signed the Mankind Declaration. Gaius then tells Colbert he is no longer the finance minister. Outside, Colbert meets Roroa, who tells him to come with her as they are going out of sight. Souma meets with the 3 dukes. As they introduce themselves, he issues his ultimatum. If they continue to disobey him, he will consider them traitors. Excel asks him what his intentions for the 3 duchies are, and Souma states that if they obey him, he won't be taking any actions against them. Excel then wonders their armies, and Souma states he will incorporate them into the Forbidden Army and form a new united force. Caster explains that their system is there to prevent any oppression against any race. Souma agrees, but states that's true for when there is peace. However, their neighbors are ready to attack them, and in times of strife, military with multiple command structures is futile. Caster wonders what will happen if the central power goes corrupt, and Souma tells him he can come and claim his head. Excel then asks him about the new city he is making and what will happen of Lagoon City. Souma explains the new city is planned as a port of trade as well as a tourist spot, and Lagoon City will continue to serve as naval port. Excel is relieved to hear that. She then bows down and states that she and the Navy are at his command. Souma asks Caster to do the same. but he states he can't as he still can't understand why the king gave his throne to him without discussing it with them. Castor asks Liscia if she knows anything, but she cites her father saying that if he takes action, some would begin to suspect things and Souma is the king now. Hearing that, Castor says he cannot accept him as king and will be joining Jorg. He states that 100 of the Red Dragon City Knights will be joining Jorg, but the remaining Air Force will remain neutral. Souma turns to Jorg, but states he won't be asking him, as the moment he accepted the nobles guilty of corruption, it was evident he had no intention of following him. However, he wonders what stirred him so intensely. Jorg states it's his pride as a warrior, as he gains supreme opportunity. He will decide the fate of Elfrieden through his own acumen. Before they head into battle, Souma has one proposal. As he believes they don't want the fight to drag and involve innocent civilians, he would like to establish a rule that if they kill or capture the other, the forces under their command immediately switch to their side. Jorg and Castor agree to that. Before Jorg leaves, Liscia calls him and cuts her hair, showing her resolve to stride with Souma. As Jorg and Castor leave, Souma apologizes to Excel that he wasn't able to convince Castor, but she states it was his decision. Souma wonders if Juna is there and Juna shows herself. He thanks her. Because of her connections, they won't fight against Duchess Walter. Excel reveals she had her look into Sauma's fitness to be king, but he is fine with it as that led to them joining his side. Hakuya informs Souma that 30,000 troops from Amadonia are invading through the Ursula mountain pass and are likely to occupy the city of Altamura. Reaching Altamura, Gaius Amadonia likes the soil and how much the land can provide. Weiss Gero, the lord of Altamura, tells him that Altamura won't be fighting back in hopes for mercy, but wish to wait a bit before they open their gates as it's currently divided into two factions, those that want to fight back and those that don't want to. While they don't stand a chance against Amadonia, there are some fools who can't realize it and they need more time to convince them, and it's not worth losing soldiers. Julius Amadonia tells Gaius that statistically it takes 5 times as many soldiers to take a fortress, and it's better to not waste soldiers. Gaius promises that they will spare them if they surrender, but as Weiss leaves, he states that he will behead him once they take over the fortress. With Forbidden Army being 10,000 and Jorg Carmine 40,000, Gaius is sure that Souma won't be able to send help. Meanwhile, as the negotiations between Souma and Jorg failed, Souma immediately mobilized the Forbidden Army, and the next day they were able to build a fortress near the Randall Castle, where Halbert Magna and Keed Foxia are currently fighting the enemy. With Keed's magic and materials prepared earlier, they were able to build the fortress quickly and protect it from magic and fire attacks. However, the enemy brings out Kanons, who start to damage the fortress. Sir, a dark elf, then appears and shoots at the cannons before they hit the walls. He explains that Halbert helped him save his daughter during the landslide, and as she wanted to become part of the Forbidden Army when she grows up, Sir felt annoyed. Ludwin then leads a cavalry outside the fortress, focusing only on destroying the cannons. The corrupt aristocrats complain to Jorg that his army is weak. He assures them that they are 4 to 1 in size and they won't lose. The aristocrats wonder if they shouldn't wipe them in one attack, but he comments the aristocrats foolishly did that and lost the cannons. Jorg is sure that Souma isn't in the fortress as they have been only defending, but if Souma was there, they would have tried some sort of an attack. However, as he doesn't know where he is, he needs to lure him. Gaius loses his patience and decides to attack Altamura. However, in that moment, he hears men yelling from the fortress. A soldier informs him that Weiss wishes an urgent audience with him. Weiss comes and apologizes, stating it takes time to persuade the men. Angry, Gaius wishes to take his head as an example, but Weiss informs him that the voices he heard are the war cries of the men who are ready to fight to the death. Julius confirms that if they fight, they will lose men. Weiss offers gold dust as apology and asks him to not attack until noon the next day, to give him time to convince the men. With Julius' approval, Gaius agrees. Inside Altamura's fortress, Weiss wonders if this was the correct choice, because with that amount of gold, they could have hired mercenaries from Zem. Excel Walter states that the mercenaries are driven by money and can change sides. As she is fighting 3 enemies right now, time is their ally, and she doesn't mind spending gold for that. Weiss guesses that neither Jorg or Castor knew that Excel was in Altamura during the conferences with the king. Weiss wonders if time until noon is enough. Excel states it should be, but if Souma can't come until then, they will die as heroes inside the fortress. The next day, Keed notices that Jorg's army is smaller and guesses they are expecting the battle to continue for longer, but that will also make defending the fortress easier. Halbert is informed of approaching wyverns from Castor's Air Force army. The previous night in Red Dragon City, Tallman informs Castor Vargas that the citizens have been evacuated, and here are only the Air Force personnel and Varga's household. Castor had started to change his opinion about the king and tells Tallman to turn down all Air Force units' requests wishing to join him. Castor doesn't mind fighting alongside Jorg, but not with the corrupt aristocrats. However, it's too late for him to change anything. Tallman informs him that the Forbidden Army had marched towards Jorg, making it possible that Souma is ignoring him as he only has 100 Wyvern Knights. However, Castor doesn't believe it, as it would be smart to first defeat him and then take the Air Force to attack Jorg. Carla Vargas informs Castor that a single ship led by Souma is spotted, the battleship Albert, who now has wheels and is pulled on land by beasts. As the ships attack the castle, Souma contacts Castor, offering him to change his mind. However, even though Castor had already started to change his opinion, he doesn't wish to change his word. Carla leads the Wyvern Knights, preparing to bomb the ship Kanons, but Souma uses bolt throwers, surprising them as usually bolt throwers are fixed-base defensive weapon used for defending bases. One of the soldiers suggests they attack the wheels, since they are improvised and must be weak. Carla doesn't wish to attack the bridge as Liscia could be there and killing Souma could also upset her. She starts to believe she should have changed her father's mind and joined Souma, but as it's too late now, she orders the knights to go lower and attack the wheels. They succeed and also manage to destroy the cannons, but realize there are no soldiers on the ship and an armor with a puppet arm was using the cannons. Carla then orders the knights to return to the castle as quickly as possible, realizing that Souma lured them away from it, as his objective is Castor. Having an excellent librarian, Souma used the blueprints of the Red Dragon City and managed to infiltrate it easily. Castor Vargas realizes that he knows about the underground escape routes and everything else. As it's their first time meeting face to face, they reintroduce themselves. Castor explains that Tallman has nothing to do with the situation, and if he ends up defeated, Souma can entrust the Air Force to him. Castor doesn't intend to give himself up easily and draws his sword. Aisha then engages him to protect the king. As they fight, Souma uses his Musashibo to surprise Castor and block his attack. In that moment, Liscia comes out of the puppet and freezes Castor, with Aisha dealing a defeating blow. Not expecting Liscia to be inside the puppet, Castor admits defeat. Castor asks Liscia if Souma is a good king, and Liscia confirms he is a good king to her and she wishes him to be the king. If her father decides to take the throne back, she would fight on Sauma's side against her father. The battleship explodes and Souma realizes that the Air Force will be returning soon. Liscia takes out a slave collar, explaining it's set to Souma as master, and if he tries to harm him, the collar will tighten and cut his head. Castor understands then and accepts the collar. Carla Vargas returns and sees her father defeated. Liscia explains the situation and that if she harms Souma, her father will die. Carla then kneels and accepts a slave collar as well. Souma then grants Tallman temporary commission of Air Force General, and to take the Air Force and join the Forbidden Army. Tallman agrees, but wonders what will happen to Castor and Carla. Souma explains their case will be reviewed once the fighting is over. While traveling, Liscia starts to embellishingly talk about the various good traits Carla has, such as how she is the devoted type and she will do whatever she is told, even if she dislikes it. However, before she could go further, Souma stops her, knowing she is begging for Carla's life, but wonders if she considered the risks that may come with that. As Carla committed the crime of rebellion, if he takes her as a concubine, her crime could be overlooked, but if the king wrests the law, he will lose the trust of the people. Carla states she won't be pleading for her life and that Souma had sent them letter after letter requesting their assistance, but they rejected them, and so she is not unwilling to lose her life. Near the Randall Castle, Halbert notices the incoming Air Force, but as they pass them, Keed realizes they have won the gamble. Tallman leads the army and tells them to not attack the residential sections. Souma joins Halbert and Keed. Seeing how freely Halbert talks with Souma surprises Carla, but Liscia explains he has permission and is considered one of them. The corrupted nobles meet with Jorg Carmine, stating that the Air Force had betrayed them and wonder what to do. Hearing the report for the damages from Beowulf Gardner, Jorg comments that this means they have taken the people of the city as hostages, and that means it's their defeat. The nobles can't understand as the army is virtually unscathed and they can use the people as shields while hiding in the castle. That angers Jorg, who questioned their proposal. The noble can't see anything wrong sacrificing their subjects. Seeing what type of people the nobles are, Jorg then places slave collars on them and states it was outrageous to think that he would lower himself to their level. Jorg comments he had done his part and asks Beowulf to place a slave collar on him, and then send a message of surrender, stating that he takes full responsibility, and the soldiers only followed his orders, except the noble's army. Jorg takes out a wine, gifted to him by King Albert. He planned on drinking it on the princess wedding and regrets he won't be able to see it, but his gift is the best wedding gift he could make. Beowulf then informs Jorg that Souma isn't entering Randall, but is already heading west with the Forbidden Army and ordered Jorg's army to follow the Forbidden Army when they regroup. Jorg realizes Souma is going for a bigger fish and celebrates accepting the king. Carla isn't sure what is going on. Liscia explains that Jorg had arranged this. Souma then explains he didn't intend to fight the three dukedoms, and while Excel Walter may have looked like she changed her position after his ultimatum, she was already following Souma before that. Her daughter, Juna, mediated on Sauma's behalf, but as he didn't know how the other two would react, he asked her to not reveal it. Liscia had told Souma that Jorg is reasonable if you talk heart to heart with him, but as he had taken the corrupt nobles, Souma didn't know what to expect from him. Halbert's father, Glaive Magna, requested audience with Souma and told him that Jorg intends to gather all corrupt nobles, stage a rebellion with them and have the king stamp them out. As some could remain concealed and cause trouble, Jorg started confrontation with Souma to drive them out and join him. Even if they knew who the corrupt noblemen were, their relations by marriage beg for mercy. Souma has no choice but to let matters stand. However, in a situation like this, that won't protect them. Glaive explains that Souma only took their property on the surface, but with their other assets, now they have employed mercenaries from Zem. Souma comments that it means all of their money will flow into Zem, but realizes they could use it as ransom. Glaive confirms, stating that while capturing the nobles, they will capture the mercenaries as well and asks them for ransom. Souma can't understand why Jorg must go that far, why he must fight someone who can see that far ahead, and why Jorg is trusting him that much. Glaive tells him he can ask Jorg when he meets him. Souma only told all of that to Liscia as he was afraid that if the information leaks, Jorg's life-risking strategy would fall apart. At Altamura, Gaius Amadonia sees the time he set for Weist is up, but notices Excel Walter standing on the wall, as it should have taken her 3 days to come from Lagoon City. Gaius and Julius wonder if she was here the whole time. Julius then realizes this is a trap and they must retreat. Excel then creates a large screen with her water magic. On it, Souma broadcasts a message to the whole country, stating that Duke Castor and Jorg had been defeated and the civil war is over. However, he explains that Amadonia has used this chance and invaded their territory as they want to take their land back from generations ago. Their current king Gaius promoted friction between Souma and the three dukedoms. Given the situation with the demon's army, they can't excuse their barbarism in a time like this and declares war against Amadonia. Souma is sure that Gaius is watching and states he is heading towards Amadonian capital, Van. And while he is dawdling around at Altamura, he will burn down Van. Aroa Amadonia receives news about Gaius returning to Van. She guesses they didn't return unharmed and Gatsby Colbert confirms. She realizes that Souma isn't an average man and knows exactly how her father thinks. She explains the shortest route back would be through Ursula Mountains and they will travel through it at night where they will be ambushed. Gatsby confirms and explains that 30,000 entered the valley, but only 15,000 left it. Gaius gathered soldiers and provisions from surrounding villages and managed to recover their numbers to 25,000. Aroa comments that will turn the people against him and even if they take back Van, there could be a rebellion. Gaius sees all of the Elfrieden flags outside Van and guesses it has fallen, but Julius points out to him that the castle still hasn't fallen. Happy about that, he tells his army to attack the enemy. As the battle starts, Souma stays behind. Carla Vargas notices that Sauma's mind is elsewhere, and Souma explains that a king's job is before and after the battle, and beyond that is only sticking his neck out to plead for the lives of his men. Carla is surprised that Souma isn't afraid to die, but Souma tells her otherwise. However, he realizes he may be a charlatan. He explains that unless he becomes a full king, he can't send soldiers onto the battlefield, but at some point, without him even realizing it, he started conducting himself as a king. Gaius tells Julius to exit battle, and that the battle is lost due to Gaius making a mistake and sending his exhausted soldiers right into battle. Julius wishes for Gaius to escape too, but Gaius explains that Elfrieden wants his head, and he can't escape. Julius still refuses, but Gaius orders him and then heads into battle to buy time for Julius. Souma hears that Gaius is coming right at him. He tells Carla that he is re-imprinting her caller's master to Liscia, and if something happens to him, she is to tell Liscia that he yields the throne to her. Carla finds it ridiculous and tells him to order her to defeat Gaius instead, explaining that she won't be doing it for him, but to not see Liscia sad. Souma then orders her, and she flies into battle. Ludwin heads for Gaius and strikes him down, but realizes he is a double. Carla engages Gaius in a battle, but he pushes her to her knees. Sauma's Musashibo then comes and engages Gaius, but Gaius pushes him back. Souma reveals himself and Gaius heads for him. However, Musashibo then jumps on Gaius and holds him. Souma tells Carla to ignite Musashibo, and she fires him up, causing him to burst. As the smog clears, the top of Gaius' armor is revealed to have blown up, but he still stands. As he starts moving forward stating he will show the backbone of Amadonia, multiple arrows hit him. Gaius still manages to throw his sword at Souma, but the sword hits the ground right before Sauma's feet and Gaius collapses. Souma announces that he witnessed the backbone of Amadonia, and the valor of Gaius will be spoken for many years to come. Later, Roroa learns about her father's death and cries, stating he was dumb right to the end. Next day at Van's castle, Liscia comments the place is nicely built. Souma states they could have used the money elsewhere, and gives the street as example as they look like a maze. Liscia says it's on purpose so that the arrows and cannons don't have a clear shot, making Souma realize everything is though for military. Liscia realizes that Souma planned to take over Amadonia for quite some time. However, she is impressed that they had so few casualties near the border. Souma explains that Hakuya vetoed his proposal to evacuate the villagers as that would make Amadonia realize Elfrieden is aware of them. Thus, Souma had hired adventurers to protect refugees from the village from mysterious monsters called flame pirates, which was actually a mission to get the villagers to safety. Ludwin reports that Julius fled west, and the princess had left the town before that with the finance minister and some key officials. Souma tells him to contact Parnom and ask Hakuya to send some bureaucrats. Poncho reports on Amadonia's treasury, explaining that they had scant capital and food, but had abundance of weapons. Souma tells him to sell the weapons to raise funds and ration the food until things calm down. Glaive reports the soldiers are in good spirit and with this momentum they can conquer all of Amadonia. However, Souma explains they are not taking any more territory outside of Van and won't be fighting. Liscia thinks they should beat down the enemy, but Souma comments that once the Empire shows up, it won't matter how much territory they have taken. Souma is expecting them to come due to the declaration Amadonia signed and fears it won't be just military sanctions. Liscia states that Amadonia attacked them first, but Souma believes they will just use the excuse that Elfrieden didn't sign it up. But he decided to not sign it up as there is a catch that can prove to break up the Empire in the future. Souma calls Juna Dama in order to proceed with his next plan, Project Lorelei. News Elfrieden broadcast is made across Van. As the news is over, they proceed with entertainment program. Souma makes Aisha dress up host, explaining that, if they believe she is a hostess, he can easily have her next to him for protection during the program. Souma and Aisha come out and introduce their first musical program and call for Pamela Carroll to sing a song. Next, Souma calls for Juna. As she sings, he tells Aisha that she needs to keep a close guard at him when the next singer comes out. Souma then announces their next special guest, Amadonia's Lieutenant General Margarita Wonder, to sing Amadonia's national anthem. After she sings it, she tells Souma to kill her, but he wonders why. Margarita explains she sang the Amadonia's national anthem and it's a song demanding the return of the land from Elfrieden. She wonders how he can allow it, but Souma explains there is no law in Elfrieden that forbids singing other countries' songs. It's not easy to answer what makes a good country, but a country where you can freely sing songs is a good country. On the western part of the continent is the Grand Chaos Empire, who occupies the greatest amount of territory and its population. Military might and technology is unmatched. With the appearance of the Demon Lord's domain, things changed and the Grand Chaos Empire took the lead of mankind. Their current leader, Maria Euphoria, created the Mankind Declaration to unite mankind against the monsters and stop warring and ethnic discrimination. At the Grand Chaos Empire, imperial capital, Valois, Jean Euphoria visits Maria and informs her that she is heading towards Van to meet the Hero King. Jean knows Amadonia is taking advantage of her, but she must negotiate for the return of the occupied Van. Maria is aware as well that Amadonia is at fault, but they must follow the Mankind Declaration. Maria has heard of how brilliant Souma is and believes he will be reasonable, but Jean disagrees things will go easy as Maria is an idealist, while Souma is a realist. Sauma's work has increased due to Van. He receives even more requests to use the plaza and Liscia comments that after his music show, a lot of people felt awakened and want to express themselves. Baroa sees the plaza full with people expressing themselves with various plays, acts, contests, and demonstrations. As the people are getting their freedom back, she believes it will be less likely that her brother, Julius, being reinstated and there will be big backlash if he tries to take their freedom again. Hakuya informs Souma that a 50,000-strong army is heading their way from the Empire, but an advance party will arrive sooner. Poncho shows a flower to Souma, beguiling Lily. He explains the flower has a powerful hallucinatory effect, and if you inhale it, you will become like a sleepwalker. However, as he shows its root, Souma quickly realizes its high-value food product, and Poncho confirms, explaining there is no hallucinatory effect in it. As Poncho mentions, the lily grows in huge clusters in the mountain areas in Amadonia. Souma realizes it may help them solve the food shortage. However, they must be harvested while they are pollinating, or their toxicity will spread into the bulb. Souma wonders how Poncho got this one, and Poncho explains there are people living in the mountains of the Grand Chaos Empire that harvest them and eat them, and they use orangutans to harvest the lilies. Poncho had negotiated with the orangutans in Amadonia using Tomo, and they agreed to harvest the lilies for them. But as a payment, they want to regularly receive sake barrels instead of wages. Souma agrees and tells him to start increasing production. Souma, Juna, and Tomo are out for a walk in the town. Per Juna's suggestion, Souma decides to buy a new dress for Tomo and takes her to a Sebastian's shop. While Juna and Tomo look around for clothes, Sebastian wishes to ask Souma something and Souma agrees. Sebastian asks him that if on a battlefield, all of your generals are gathered for a war council, and the first proposed plan was a good one, would Souma implement the plan immediately? Souma states he won't, as he would wonder if there wasn't an even better plan. Sebastian then says that if he was one of the generals and wanted his plan to be adopted, it would be better to withhold it and carefully propose it after the debate has reached a standstill. Sebastian then tells him that bargaining between men and women is another kind of battle. Souma finds Sebastian a magnificent strategist. As they leave the shop, Tomo wishes to carry her clothes herself. Souma then reveals he also bought her shoes, which makes Tomo even more happy. Souma also gives Juna a hairpin and thanks for all of her help. They proceed to enjoy their time and visit various stalls. After eating and resting, Jean shows up, commenting it's an interesting way to use the broadcast system, and she wishes to use the system in her own nation. Jean introduces herself and explains she wanted to see the king for herself and confirm what kind of man he is. She heard rumors of how he saved a country from bankruptcy, adopted new ways of preparing and eating food, and how lecherous he is as he gathered all the beauties as his consorts even though he is engaged to the princess. Souma and Juna are surprised that such a rumor has spread. Jean then guesses that if this is false, then her other plan fails. As Souma wonders what she means, Jean comments that she planned on bringing her beautiful sister to plead with him, which would have made it easy for him to accept their demands. Jean proceeds to explain that her sister is viewed as a saint and everyone keeps her distance. They don't have anything to gain assisting Amadonia, but as her sister wants to treat everyone equally, they need to assist them. Souma realizes that Jean is also a realist. Jean then apologizes for Sauma's summoning. He then realizes he was a human sacrifice. He explains to Juna that since Elfrieden didn't sign the declaration and is far from the Demon Lord's domain, the other countries feel the nation is benefiting from it and demanded financial aid from Elfrieden. Grand Chaos Empire then made Elfrieden perform the hero summoning to make it look like they are providing support, even though they didn't need a hero. They also didn't expect the summoning to be successful. Souma is fine with all that, as he found a family he wishes to protect. As Jean leaves, Souma realizes the negotiations would be hard. Later, Souma gives Aisha a lipstick and Liscia a necklace as presents.